This is Mark Tobias with James TAGG at TRUPHONE in London, and he's the Chief Technology Officer for the company. They've been in business several years, and they offer SIM cards for greatly reduced rates in some areas of the world, as opposed to the rates that are normally being paid by corporate and consumer. But what I want to visit with you about, there's basically a storm brewing in the regulatory world in England and potentially in America with regard to the requirement that all brokerage houses and traders not make any phone calls that are not recorded. And first of all, have I characterized that properly?
Well, the law in the UK, or the regulation, was that by 14th of November, all mobile calls
of this year.
Of this year. So
yeah, 2011.
It's happened. So all mobile calls that might result in a trade.
How would you know?
Well, if the guy's a trader, then you have a reasonable expectation
that anything,
a lot of his calls result in a trade.
Then any conversation is going to be relevant to a trade.
Correct, relevant to a trade. So effectively all of the banks have given their traders, their core traders, phones by the 14th. And I suspect that what will happen is that will mean that they give more and more phones over time to more and more people. But at the moment, the core traders have all now got recording phones.
Now, when you say banks, you're talking about brokerage houses.
Well, it's anybody who does anything financial that might result in a financial trade.
So this is covered by your Financial Services Authority? Yeah.
Yes. And
do they have any teeth in this law, or is it because in America everybody would say, yeah, okay, whatever, we'll carry another phone?
Well, everyone's done it by the 14th, and they all asked whether they could have more time, and they were told no. So I believe everyone is either in compliance or has explained that they tried, really hard, and something's gone wrong,
right.
And they are working to fix it as an exception to the rule as opposed to the rule.
So how's this going to work?
It's very simple, really. All networks in the world support a thing called CAMEL, which means that when you make a call, it signals to the network that you want to make a call.
Right.
And when we see that CAMEL
and how do you spell that?
It's CAMEL. And so it that CAMEL trigger comes back to our server, and then normally it's used for prepaid calling. So basically each time you make a call, there's a CAMEL trigger, it comes back to the home network and says, is this guy good for
so it's verification of billing status, so you're a valid number.
Yes.
Okay.
But one of the things that you can do when that happens is to simply say, oh yes, could you call a different number instead? So you call a recording number,
and then call forward the number through, or route the number, or branch the audio.
Absolutely.
And where's that audio going to be stored? On your server?
We route it immediately to a routing server, and that goes straight into the bank's vault. So basically, the actual audio calls are either recorded in the bank's vault or in one of the super secure sort of data centers in the City of London. That
are contracted to do this.
Yeah, and they have all sorts of high security cables, and when their fiber exits the building, it does in a metal duct so you can't tap it, and all this fun.
Right, and what about inside employees that get paid to access your audio? How are you going to deal with that?
Banks have a whole security regime around who in their bank has access to these recordings. There are also provisions so that if I am a trader and I have a mum, I can declare that my mum's telephone number is private. I'm not going to result in a financial trade, and I can have it removed from the recording pool.
Oh, so what about incoming versus outgoing calls?
I can have it done so that my mum's calls are not recorded either way.
So then what happens if I spoof the caller ID? Or call forward?
You can't do that with us. We know where you're calling. It's in the network.
Because in America, we can spoof caller ID.
Yeah, we're not using caller ID.
You're not, or automatic number identification, which is a different level than caller ID. But we can spoof ANI also.
The problem is if you spoof what we're using to say where you're calling, you'll call the wrong place. If you want to phone your mum, you need to phone her telephone number. You can say you're Fred Bloggs, right?
Right.
We can't stop you saying you're someone different, but you can't call your mum on not her phone number.
If I dial through a PBX, if I'm on mobile,
Yes.
and I dial through a PBX,
Yes.
I can't manipulate the number I'm calling. I can manipulate my ANI, my automatic number identification, coming from that PBX.
You can.
But I can't obviously I can't manipulate the terminating number. So does that make any difference to you?
No, we've recorded you on your way into the PBX.
Okay,
so it's a negative issue. If you say your mum shouldn't be recorded, we need to see evidence that you were trying to phone your mum.
Okay.
Right? So it's a sort of you have to opt out as opposed to an opt-in mechanism.
My mum. I'm gonna have to start calling my mother my mum.
Oh, I'm sorry. My mother. Yes.
Yeah, right. So is there a lot of consternation with regard to this? Or does everybody understand why it's being put into effect?
Well, it was a long time coming.
Yeah.
So people were told it was on its way. I think people assumed that it would be put back, and it wasn't put back. So there was a little bit of angst at that point because people realised that they were absolutely going to have to do something. But it's just like packing to go on vacation, right? You are going to go on vacation tomorrow. Everyone, the night before they go on vacation, ends up, running around looking for their passport, making sure they got their tickets. It was it's always stressful, but pretty much everyone has done something.
Okay, so the bottom line is, how is TRUPHONE, your company, going to play into this market?
We provided call recording for a couple of big banks for the date. We also have a very nice solution which is essentially cloud-based. It's in the network, so it has the advantage that you can't really spoof it, which people like. Plus you have the fact that it's essentially invisible because it's in the network. So a number of people who put in slightly more kludgy solutions that involve call forwarding and so on,
right,
are now asking us whether they could put in the cloud-based solution that we have because it's quite elegant.
So will you do this for a consumer or corporate if they request it, that are not regulated by the FSA?
Anyone who asks us to do it that feels they ought to. Remember, it's a self-declared thing. So you've got a hedge fund trader who's just, has a little office down the river and he's on his own and he feels he ought to be recording. He can phone us up and say, I feel I ought to be recorded.
Okay, and can I, if I do that, say as a lawyer, if I do that and I want access to the audio, I need the file. Okay,
Yes.
Something comes up 3 months from now, I go back in my diary and I say, okay, I need this phone call.
Yeah.
Can I retrieve it?
If it's been recorded in that way, yes. Now, what you're asking is whether you, as a normal individual, could have all your calls recorded routinely.
Right. If I want to use that SIM card and I provision that through TRUPHONE.
That would be difficult because in a number of places in the world you need to tell people if you're recording their call.
Well, in 40 states in America you don't.
Right.
It's called one-party consent.
Yeah.
Because I deal with this all the time.
I'm sure you do. Yeah.
So and that's my problem, that's not your problem.
You would need to explain to us and prove to us that was legitimate, but we could provide it, yes.
Okay, but if, for example, if I'm in South Dakota, it's a one-party state. So if I make a phone call, for example, on my special phone, it's really not, you're just a carrier.
We are just a carrier.
Right.
Yes.
So it's incumbent on the individual if he wants to record his phone calls, just like we do now.
Yeah.
That's my problem, it's really not your problem. So the question is, technically, would you offer that service to your customers?
We might offer it, and we've been asked to offer it for law firms and people.
Right, well, it's important.
Yeah, where they want to record and transcribe because it's useful and so on.
Right, of course.
I would just need to spend a bit more time on the legal side to make sure. So with a bank, it's very clear that...
Right. Yeah, it's covered under regulations.
It's covered under regulations, and anyone who you wouldn't have an expectation that the call is recorded, we play a message in front of them saying this call is being recorded, right? Anyone that you phone who's a trader, you have to be an idiot if you're involved in financial activity.
Right, not to know it's recorded.
Not to know it's
Right,
recorded.
right.
I mean,
okay,
you
but
know,
can I, if I'm a corporation or I'm a law firm, can I kill that message? Obviously, you can turn it on
in
or
the
off.
UK?
No, if I have one of your SIM cards, and I say I want your service, we're a law firm.
Yes.
Because I would imagine a lot of folks reading this will say, "Oh, that's a neat service.
Right.
We could really use that." And use this phone if you want to record your phone calls to be protected, inbound or outbound.
Yeah.
So the question is, but I don't want people to know I'm recording it.
Right.
So you can turn off the flag that says, "Don't give the message."
Technically, you can clearly do anything you like. I would need to do two things. One is be absolutely sure that that was legal.
Right.
With respect to the state in which you were. And second thing is I'd have to think quite hard about our brand and whether we want to be recording calls for people without telling people, because you know that people don't like.
I know that's an English thing versus an American thing. Seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it is.
But I would need to spend some time.
Right. Right.
You know,
but it would be an interesting business model.
It would be absolutely an interesting business model, and we have built things like that in the past that we have not launched.
Right.
For the obvious reason that we never got to the point where we were totally comfortable.
Right.
You know, that's what we wanted to do.
Right. Well, sorry to put you on the spot, but actually it would be a very neat product.
Yeah. No, it's a neat
and there are carriers in America that are doing it now. We can go through, like spoofing services. You can go through and record your calls. I think actually on Google we can record our calls. On Google Voice.
Yes, and I think if it becomes common that calls are recorded and people get used to the fact that you know, that's just...
Yeah, just like ANI. Everybody was complaining about it.
That will be fine.
Yeah. James, thank you very much.